Well, that was great. Can you hear me now? Okay, so let's try this again. Um, I had this whole conversation with myself. Um, Say hello in the chat box. Greet each other. Tell us a little bit about what you do. Because I'd love for you guys to, if you don't already know each other, to connect with each other, have more conversations. Because the time that we're spending together every day is more around adding value in each other's space together rather than us just presenting. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. So for me, I'm from LadyBugz, if you don't already know. Welcome to Elna, Janine, and Paul, Tony, Yvonne. I'm sure others will be joining as they connect. And it's great to have you guys here. Doesn't matter how big the audience is, it's about being at the right time, at the right place, and helping each other during this time, learning more, and understanding a little bit more about how we can ensure that our employees are getting the best out of what we have to offer. So today we're going to be talking a little bit more about brand ambassadors and how your employees can become your greatest fans. So imagine a world where, okay, we're already there, digital. So we're in digital, we're in the space where marketing is not just about having influencers anymore. The influencer marketing is one thing because they get paid to promote a product. So, someone's wearing Nike boots, someone's, Adidas or whatever it is. But from a brand perspective, what you're wanting to do is create brand ambassadors from your employees. So we're going to go through some of the content and understand first a little bit more around how digital marketing and the digital space has changed and how employee engagement actually contributes to making sure that your brand ambassadors are on board, and how do you create your brand ambassadors to educate them and align them to your business values. So at any one point, you're welcome to put a message in the chat box. So I am keeping an eye on that. And, share what you think, ask questions. That's what this is all about. It's more about around collaboration. So in South Africa, this is now from Hootsuite in January 2020, South Africa has 58, almost 59 million people. That's another reason why we have to stay home and be in lockdown. And internet users is more than half of that. So 62% is internet users, and 196% has mobile devices, which means that probably everybody has two mobiles. Well, a lot of people have two mobiles to one person. I have one, but you think about some people have two or three different mobile devices, two or three different businesses running on the same time. Then daily time spent on the internet for South Africa is almost 9.5 hours. That's a lot of time. So 3 hours, over 3 hours is spent on social media alone. What are you as a brand, and what are your employees as a brand talking about? Is it about, the latest and the greatest shoes, and your business has nothing to do with shoes? Or is it about the people and being authentic within your business? In other words, sharing your experiences, sharing and elevating, because it's one thing elevating someone within your business and saying thank you, but it's a lot easier now to actually give kudos. And I know that Ilana and I think Janine also gave kudos the last time to Amanda on LinkedIn. So what you're wanting to do is add value where you can and give people an opportunity to be uplifted within the social media space. So time spent on the internet is almost 9.5 hours. We are the second country in the world that spends the most time on the internet per day. Now, you would think with the limited resources and our introduction into the internet space, we would be very limited in terms of internet usage. Even though our data is probably a lot more expensive than most countries, we still spend the most time on the internet. Well, except for the Philippines. So worldwide, the average is almost 7 hours. We are spending about 2.5 hours more than the average. What are you doing effectively with that time, with your team, with yourself? Are you doing self-development? Are you, reaching out to new people, new connections? Are you doing things differently now from when we started before lockdown? Because now you have an opportunity. So I'm sure that we're going to see a global trend from 9.5 hours to next year's January 2021 view of the world is going to be a lot more than that, because we have all been pushed into a more digital space, whether we like it or not. Okay, so daily time spent on social media. South Africa still spends just over 3 hours. Philippines is almost 4 hours. We're still very high on spending time on social media. If you look, you would think that the United States of America and all those wonderful places are spending more time than we are, but actually we're spending an hour more on social media than even the States is. And in Paul saying, very surprising to see that South African stats. What draws us to the internet so much, considering the data prices? Exactly. It's, I don't know, maybe there's a lot more fraudsters in South Africa that we're spending more time on the internet. I think it's also that we're looking for a different type of connectivity and trying to unify ourselves within the space within South Africa. So also you think about just, our entertainment is probably not as top notch as the rest of the world. So we spend more time, scrolling instead of, watching a little bit of television, reading a book. I think we're not reading enough here in South Africa. My personal opinion, I don't know when last you actually went to a library. Last time I went to a library is when I took my kids when they were small. But I do read, but I read more online now. I read more other content. I do have other books that I read, like Brene Brown, but a lot more of it is happening online. So good question. So if we look at the facts around engagement, a paper published by the Performance Improvement Council, studies by Gallup that confirm that engaged employees are more productive, create better customer experiences, and are more likely to remain with their employers. As a result, employers win because they get a more stable and motivated workforce and can consequently spend more time strengthening their brand, which means that employee engagement is directly linked to sales. So there's other studies that also show that the more engaged your employee workforce is, the higher your sales are, which means your brand, your people within your brand needs to think about things differently. Your executive team needs to think about things in terms of how can we maximize the current people that we're already paying and elevate them and help self-develop them to be able to then start sharing on social media their experiences, but authentically. So I did a little bit of research, and 16 times more likely, so people are 16 times more likely to read a post from a friend than from a brand themselves. Now you think about it. Facebook, you're not going to necessarily watch all the sponsored posts, okay? You are going to read all the funnies from your friends. But in LinkedIn, even a sponsored content, our tendency is to scroll past sponsored content. When we see the word promoted or sponsored, we kind of go, oh, well, let's just go a little bit faster. So what we're wanting to do, and most people, when I have this conversation, they say that this is what they do. What you're wanting is your employees to share the brand content firstly. So your marketing department is spending time, money, effort, resources in creating some digital content to put onto the social media platform. But if your employees, yes, if they're not engaged with the team, with the brand, how are they supposed to know that they're supposed to share it? I will comment more likely 99.99% of the time on a person's post than I will on a brand post. Firstly, because I know the algorithms behind LinkedIn. I also know how the situation works from that perspective, where if you're commenting on a company post, a lot of the times the marketing department does not know how to view that comment as a company page. So there's a whole other kettle of fish where training is required. But a person is more likely to respond quicker than it is for a company to respond. And you know that person when that person is posting. Okay, so what you're wanting to do is make sure that your brand alignment is also your employees are aligned to the brand. Now, how do you transform your employees into brand ambassadors? In other words, your greatest fans. What you want to need to do is promote self-discovery. So promoting self-discovery is understanding your personal branding, being authentic around that. You know, you need to make branding branding awareness a priority. In other words, understanding what is the corporate branding, what is our messaging, and then connect the personal to the corporate. Because a lot of the time there's this disconnect between the person and the corporate understanding of what is actually happening in the brand. And that's a big reason why sales teams have a difficult time in creating those sales, because people will look at what's happening on the brand. And if there's a disconnect in terms of what the salesperson is saying and what the brand is saying, how are you supposed to actually match the two? So let's look at the first point, promoting self-discovery and personal branding. So teach your employees about becoming authentic best selves in their work and in home. In other words, they're not different. They're not going to be this happy-go-lucky person at home and at work this very serious and non-responsive person, or vice versa. You're wanting to be yourself. You're wanting that space, because if you're allowing and teaching your team who you are as a person, we discussed some of this in yesterday's session with Paul, that you need to know who you are so that you can make the best of where you are at right now to make a difference going forward. So you need to help employees. I know that when I was at my previous organization, we did a lot of the self-discovery, but it wasn't eventually linked into the personal branding. I know that now it's doing it, but at the time when I was at the organization, they weren't ready for that. They were still on the journey of self-discovery within their brand as well as within their people. Helping your employees find their greatest strengths and work on them to integrate that into daily life. So one of the things I found out when I was in corporate was while I was sitting there, I I found that I have a passion for LinkedIn. Not because LinkedIn was paying me, not because of anything else, but I saw great value in this asset. So for me, I started creating a bigger asset in terms of connecting to the right people. I learned along the way the wrong things to do and the right things to do. But I learned that eventually on when I'm sitting around friends and family and they're saying, oh no, they're struggling, they're looking for a job. Then I would go, oh, you need to go to LinkedIn and I can help you. So I would help people along the way and along their journeys to get them to the next level. So I integrated that passion and my greatest strength, that is now LinkedIn, into my family. Everybody knows me as the person that can help them with LinkedIn, whether it's finding a job, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, branding, whatever it looks like. That was that I've become known as because I found that out by default, by realizing through self-discovery that actually I'm wanting to add more value into people's lives. And so with the use of some discovery tools that you can assist, there's lots of discovery tools out there, as well as life coaches. I would suggest that you put a plan together and take your employees through some sort of self-discovery. There's lots of free stuff available. Take the time to understand who are your employees, what they need to take the time to understand who they are, who the team is, and how can you best work together and leverage off the strengths of one another. Okay, making brand awareness a priority in Corporate Branding 101. So how many of you can say, whether you own your own small business or whether you're in a business or whether you're in corporate, whatever it looks like, how many of you can say, I know what my company stands for and what makes our brand different from our competitors? Have you done that research? I know we do digital marketing, but I know my niche and my strength and what I'm best at is LinkedIn, and I can make you stand out differently. But do you know, as an organization, do you know, does your employees, is your employees, told and retold, and as a brand being able to share that content? So in other words, point number 2 is educating your team on how to deliver on the corporate brand promise, which means that you're needing to go through a process of that the team needs to understand who are we, what do we stand for, and what is the corporate brand, and ensuring that your marketing team is capable of delivering around this messaging too. So it's no use you putting in a proposal to an organization and they're going to do their research on your organization because Google's out there. So when they're Googling your business, up comes a few people's names, whoever's the most active on LinkedIn and got a lot more engagement. Are those people speaking around what your brand and about authentically who they are and delivering on brand promise, or are they talking about shoes and you are selling software? Is it something that you are doing as an organization, is teaching them, whether the skills are that? So Paul's joined my team, and Paul has great content skills. So allowing her to create the content frees up time from marketing, from a whole lot of different resources, because that employee now understands they can add value because their passion is content. They will create the content, marketing can then just deliver and actually help spread the content on the social platforms. That way, you are elevating not just the employee who's now getting recognition, but the employer brand and the corporate brand is now speaking authentically about what's actually going on in the business. So this is where the connect from the personal and the corporate. So the most successful companies help employees understand their personal brands, capitalizing on the integration of these, individual traits with a broader corporate objective. Each individual needs to determine how he or she can deliver on the corporate brand promise in the way that it's authentic and leveraging off the corporate identity with them, that ignites that and makes them different. It makes them stand out, makes them exceptional. No one wants the same of the same. If you are going to be doing the same of the same, in other words, here's a quote, here's an article, so what? Look at how the world has changed over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. You look at what people were publishing besides COVID numbers in terms of content to what people are doing now. People doing now is offering what they could have been doing before, a lot more free webinars, education, how to, all of those kinds of things, because that is helping build your brand and building the people. And people within those organizations are feeling more free to be able to share their experiences in that section. So one of the points that I left off at the top was you need to train, coach, and lead by example. You can't expect your team to do what you tell them to do and you're not doing yourself. So the first point is train up your team to use social media more effectively. No, they're not looking for a job, okay? If you have an effective and engaged employees, they're not going to be looking for a job, even if someone is offering a job. Whether you like it or not, whether they're on LinkedIn or using it properly or not, if you are not teaching them, they're going to go elsewhere anyway. You're going to lose them in employees if you're not coaching them and guiding them through the process. So no, they're not looking for a job. They're your biggest fans. Teach them how to show that. Coach them along the way to ensure consistency to themselves and the brand. So it's not just about a once-off, there you go, there's a training session and let's, but it's how the teams can work together and say, I think we could add more content, or we could maybe go into this theme. Maybe there's a bigger picture. Maybe we can do a video like this, whatever that looks like. Be open to your team collaborating on content so that ultimately the brand is elevated as well as your team, okay? And lead from the front. Don't expect employees will do what you say, but at this point, they will learn about how authentic you are. Then they will lean into that experience and they will then start learning from that. So in other words, I can't expect Impor to post content and collaborate if I'm not doing it on a daily basis. I even go to the next level where I say that I am not the cobbler's child where I don't have any shoes on. Or I'm not the mechanic that arrives at your house in an Uber because my car broke down. I use social media to gain my experience as well as learn how the algorithms are constantly changing in order to maximize exposure and understand so that I can help my clients. If you're not utilizing the tools, let's say, for instance, you're in learning and development and you have these fantastic tools, but you don't actually know how it helps you as a person. How are you authentically supposed to actually elevate your business? You need to work through your own tools. It's what drinking your own champagne or eating your own dog food, whatever those sayings are. Make sure that you are doing what you are promoting, because ultimately that's the authenticity that's behind it. One of the things I've asked my clients to do when lockdown was announced was send me a video on some sort of encouragement, because no one's going to be reading right now. All they're reading about is COVID and they're stressed. And what do they do? Where they're going to buy this? What are they going to, how are we all going to work remotely? what you want to do is just say, how's it? I'm in this with you. All the best. Stay home, stay safe. And now you see people are starting to emerge and starting to put out content again, because COVID is there and we're getting used to, not really, but we're getting used to being at home. And now we're following a different routine. So now we're getting into that. And that's essentially how you want your brands to be portrayed, and your personal brand. So remember, as a personal brand, whether you're an employee, employer, executive, doesn't matter. You want to make sure that your personal brand is constantly the same as the person that you would meet in person. And I think that whether you're an executive or whether you're going for an interview and you're elevating your brand, you need to make sure that the consistency in what you say online and who you are in person is essential now. Recruiters, companies that are wanting to do, projects with you, they all want to see the same thing. Okay. So just sources of some of the content that I got. So William Miranda is he is someone who speaks around career development, has a couple of books out, Sprout Social, Hootsuite, and obviously myself from experience. I wanted to know, are there any specific questions? I'm happy to just check. If you have a specific question, I will promote you to a presenter so you can actually speak. If you have something, then you kind of just motion to me. What are the kinds of challenges that you feel could be implemented as a brand ambassador? I mean, I know my biggest challenge when I was in corporate and trying to convince the CEO, even though I had content and articles and a whole bunch of wonderful things, I could not seem at the time to convince the CEO that being on social media and being in the forefront was the right thing to do and that it elevated the brand. I have now better positioned myself to have better conversations to that because I have learned a lot running my own business. But I know that that was the biggest challenge for me because I was such a brand ambassador within the business, because I knew the possibilities of what was going on. I would make sure that people were following links. I would share the links on our corporates, and I would, that would be me because I know that people sharing the content online helped people. But if you were to implement something like this, what would be your biggest questions? What would be the challenges that you would face? You're welcome to just do a thumbs up or if you're wanting to be a presenter and actually ask a question on the system. And we have no questions. I couldn't have been that awesome that I've done such a good job. Oh dear. Okay, so if there's no questions, okay, hold on. Okay, and Nkwazi has a question. So I'm going to promote Nkwazi. Ooh, sorry, technology doesn't want to scroll. Promote. Okay, so as she's being promoted, it just changes the settings in the background. So Nkwazi runs her own business and has a number of different challenges, and Paul also. Okay, I will promote you in the meantime. So Tony Sham has a question saying, how do you constantly create good content? That's a good question, and that is something that is possibly another webinar, because creating good content is not just about putting out stuff and sucking things out your thumb and putting it down there. It's understanding who the the brand, understanding the brand, understanding what it is you are trying to achieve as a brand, and what is the best mediums that you could use right now to achieve what you need to achieve. Right now, you've got free webinars, you've got all those wonderful things to be able to create content, but that's a whole different conversation, and it all depends on the brand itself and how they're wanting to engage. Hope that answers your question, Tony. Okay, so Nokwazi, do you want to ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question was, how do you do this with a team and they're not necessarily your full-time employees? You leverage the gig economy.
Are you meaning, so all the people that you use as contractors, external contractors, to help engage with content?
Yeah, because they're not necessarily full-time. They're working on a number of different businesses and projects.
Okay, that's a good question. So a lot of small businesses have external people that they work with. I have a number of people as well. And I think part of the conversation when you start the project with that person is saying to them, listen, are you on social media? Please follow our brands. Please, will you also assist in sharing and collaborating on that content? Because ultimately, it's elevating yourselves, because you can, you helping develop that content or in that project or whatever that looks like, as well as adding into, it's proverbially, you kind of have that I think it's more a discussion with them when you onboard them. So, one of the first things I did when Impor was a contractor and she wasn't part of the business was I sat with her and helped her with her LinkedIn first. So in other words, she knew that this is what we do as part of the process before I even expected content from her. And I think that's where you're wanting to make sure that you're aligning all your people that are working with you, whether it's in your business or externally, that you ask them, please be advocates of who we are as a business. And remember that the more business we get as a business, the more business you potentially get as well, because there is a correlation between engagement as well as sales. So getting your team on board, a lot of the time what I do is, let's say, for instance, there's a reseller model. There's an organization that has 5 employees, but their resellers are 30, 40 resellers of what they do. Then what we do is we teach the resellers to engage with the content, but we help them along the way, because now we're helping them with their personal branding, and then we correlate it back. So that's also another model that you can use in terms of engagement, where you kind of educate. So you're helping them, you're developing your team, your external team, back into helping them develop their brand as well as your brand at the same time. I hope that answers your question, Nokwazi. Yes, it does. Okay, awesome. Paul, you had a question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question was, so I've seen a couple of brands out there, big brands, who haven't reached the point where they understand who they are as brands. Before they can educate employees about personal branding, what are the steps you suggest those type of brands take in terms of knowing who they are before teaching other employees about personal branding and being brand advocates?
Okay, that's a good question. My suggestion is you would have to start from the beginning, because as a brand, you would need the executives and some people that have been in the business for a while, and probably some new people, so new perspective. Put those people into a room and have, a marketing 101 workshop where you go back to what is your unique selling points? What it is that differentiates you from your competitors? I know we are going to have a session around business plans and that kind of understanding next week with, Nokwazi. But it's about understanding from a marketing perspective. You need to go back to your business plan and understand what it is you sell, how does it add value, and how can you educate your market around it? Who is your target market audience? How do you get the message across? So what mediums are you using? Is it B2C? Is it B2B? So in other words, business to consumer, or is it business to business? If it's business to consumer, would you need Facebook? And all of that kind of conversation needs to happen. So restaurants and travel and all of those would need, the Facebooks and the Instagrams and, that kind of branding and marketing. But your business to business conversations is about educating, not so much about the pictures, but about the content, what it is I need right now. How are you helping me solve my problems? And I think the biggest challenge with big businesses is that they've grown from 50 years ago, 30 years ago. They understood the market at that time, but they haven't grown to understand how their market has changed into what they are now, and how do they effectively reach their market, and what is their unique selling point. I'll refer it back to what we do. So I do digital marketing, and when I first started LadyBugz, I was going, we did everything. So we do websites, we do, but I didn't understand that my unique selling point and who I was until I had a conversation with a business coach. Did it take me to the next level and say, my unique selling point in my business is LinkedIn, because not a lot of people understand. People are scared of LinkedIn. So big businesses need to understand, okay, so I have a shoe, but what makes my shoe unique? Okay, Michael Jordan wears it. So what? So I think it's brand strategy, but also corporate business understanding. What is the business strategy that's linked back into the marketing, that's then linked back into the rest of the employees? Does that answer your question, Paul? Yes, it does. Okay, awesome. Are there any other questions? Has everybody at least learned a little bit on how to take up your employees better, whether they're external contractors, internal contractors, and onboard them in such a way that branding and corporate identity is part of who they become as part of your team? Let me give you an instance. In the States, there's an organization that has employed me as a contractor, but I don't work directly with the client. I work with this marketing agency who then works with the client. In other words, I am constantly speaking to them. On my LinkedIn, I have now said I am a contractor for that organization, so that when the client takes a look and we have conversations, sometimes directly because of the LinkedIn space, I need to understand a little bit more about who they are and ask the different questions. But from that perspective, they then look at my LinkedIn profile and they see I am part of that organization and I'm contracting to that people. So when you have contractors, ask them to affiliate themselves to you, because you are proud to affiliate to them, hopefully, and they are proud to affiliate to you, because ultimately that's what business synergies are about. It's about collaborating in such a way that you are allowing the people to connect with each other. So there's lots of ways you can do it, but I could spend another 3 hours talking about that because it's part of my passion, because I've been doing marketing and sales for so long. Has everybody, just give me a thumbs up, or kind of let me know that this was a good session. And okay, so Elna says, I think the main takeaway for me would be that to get the Rand narrative nailed, we can't promote it. Brand, we can't promote it if we can't speak it. Also, we need to speak the brand so it makes sense. Yes, because I know that some organizations have their own lingo within the business, but people don't understand that outside the business. So within the business, you understand all the different acronyms and you're going away at it, but not everybody understands that outside the business. So you have to do it in layman's terms when you are speaking, and generally. So in other words, you can't say one thing in the business and one thing outside. It needs to become a narrative, as well as educate the employee and the customer about that new narrative. So if you're trying to create a new narrative, you need to spend time in educating employees and customers or potential customers around that narrative. So good one, Elna. Thank you so much for your time, guys. The recording will be available afterwards. Yes, I did remember to record this time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the engagement, and hopefully you guys engage a lot more with your own brands. Looking forward to seeing that as well. So have a good afternoon and see you tomorrow. Amanda Finnegan is speaking again, because we didn't record the last session, around appreciation languages. So that's a good one that you can use within your business as well as at home. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Bye-bye, everybody.